Some shelters just seem to last forever. Research reveals the Mongol gers, a portable felt dwelling that nomads have used on the Central Asian steppe for over 3,000 years. Here is something remarkable. Families in Mongolia still pass down the same wooden frames their great-grandparents used. Structures that have survived -40-degree winters, 100-km/h winds, and constant relocation across some of the harshest terrain on Earth. Then there are the Bedouin black tents. Woven from goat hair, these shelters have protected desert traders for generations. The same tent, lasting 20 to 30 years under a sun that destroys modern synthetic fabrics in months. Viking raiders carried wool tents across the North Atlantic. The Bayeux Tapestry from 1070 AD shows these exact designs still in use centuries after they were invented. And European knights lived in linen pavilions during sieges that lasted nearly a year. Structures so well engineered they became family heirlooms. This got us asking the same question. Why does a $400 modern tent fail after one season in Iceland? Why does gear built with all the latest materials start falling apart before the warranty expires? The secret is not in the synthetic coatings sold at outdoor retailers. It is in the forgotten engineering of 4 ancient cultures who each solved the same problem differently. Today, we will not just talk about their designs. This video will show exactly why each solution was genius for its world. And it might just change how you think about the gear you trust your life to. Before we continue, I want to thank everyone who's always here, commenting, liking and sharing. It's because of you that this kind of content is possible. This episode was sponsored by the channel's members and supporters. If you'd like to support too and even have a video dedicated to you, become a member. It's simple and it makes all the difference. The framework. 4 cultures, 4 environments, 4 completely different approaches. The Vikings, cold, wet, maritime. They needed shelters set up on rocky shores after rowing for 12 hours, lightweight enough to carry on long ships, waterproof enough to survive North Atlantic storms. The Mongols, open steppe, extreme temperature swings from +30 to -40 Celsius. They needed shelters that withstand 100-km/h winds, that could move 30 kilometers the next day. The Bedouins, Arabian desert, days reaching 49 degrees Celsius, nights dropping to 4 degrees. They needed shade without trapping heat, protection from sandstorms, structures lasting decades, because materials are rare. The European knights, siege warfare, months in one location. They needed command centers, living quarters, and engineering marvels that could withstand weather and warfare alike. 4 problems, 4 solutions. Not one chose the same design. Section 3. The Geteld. Imagine you are a Viking raider in 950 AD. You and 30 men row a longship from Norway to Scotland, 2 weeks at sea. When you land, you are exhausted, raining, cold, wind brutal. You need shelter, fast, no trees nearby, no time to build, and you must leave at dawn if enemies arrive. What do you build? The Vikings built what they called a geteld. We call it a wedge tent or A-frame. 2 rectangular pieces of heavy wool cloth, about 1.8 meters long and 1.5 meters wide, sewn together along one edge. 1 horizontal ridge pole, 2 support poles at each end, 4 iron stakes. That was the entire shelter. 2 men could set it up in 15 minutes. Drape the wool over the ridge pole, prop up the ends, drive the stakes, tie it down. The shape was a triangle. Simple, elegant, and absolutely brilliant. The triangular shape is self-supporting. No center pole blocking interior space. The sloped sides shed rain and snow automatically. Wind hits the angled surface and flows around instead of catching and ripping. 2 to 4 men sleep inside with all their gear. Weapons, food, spare clothing, everything dry. But here is the genius. The ridge pole, one of the ship's oars. The support poles, spear shafts. Nothing specialized. Everything serves multiple purposes. This is not just a tent. This is an integrated system designed for total mobility. We know Vikings used this design because it appears in the Bayeux Tapestry from 1070 AD. The tapestry shows Norman soldiers, descended from Vikings, setting up triangular tents identical to the geteld design. This visual evidence confirms what the sagas describe. The fabric was not ordinary wool. It was wadmal, a specific cloth developed in Scandinavia over centuries. Wadmal is fulled. After weaving, it is beaten and compressed while wet. This process mats the fibers into dense, almost felt-like material. The result is fabric that is windproof, water-resistant, and incredibly durable. Wool has a secret weapon, lanolin. Natural oils in sheep's wool make it waterproof without treatment. When rain hits wadmal, water beads on the surface. It does not soak through, and even if wool gets damp, it stays warm. A Viking sleeping in a wet wool tent did not freeze. On a ship in the North Sea, wind chill kills faster than cold alone. Wadmal stops the wind completely. With proper care, a wadmal gettold lasted 10 to 15 years. Heavy raiding use, 5 to 8 years. Compare that to modern synthetic tents, 2 to 3 seasons before coating fails. The Vikings were not making the lightest tent. They made the most reliable one. Reliability meant coming home alive. Today, bushcraft enthusiasts use the exact same design. A tarp in an A-frame configuration. No poles needed. If you have trees, the Vikings invented ultralight shelters 1,000 years ago. We just forgot and had to rediscover it. Section 4. The portable gers. Now shift to the steppes of Central Asia. 1220 AD. You are a Mongol warrior in Genghis Khan's army. You ride 80 to 130 kilometers per day. You cannot carry much weight, but you cannot survive without shelter. Nighttime temperatures drop to -34 Celsius in winter. And the wind. Open plains offer no protection. Wind speeds of 65 to 100 kilometers per hour are common. You need shelter that is warm, windproof, quick to set up, and transportable on horseback. What do you build? The Mongols did not invent the gers. The design is thousands of years old, but they perfected the portable version. The shape is circular. A lattice wall made of wooden poles lashed with leather straps. The lattice expands or contracts like an accordion. Roof poles radiate from the lattice top to a central smoke ring. This creates a dome shape. The entire frame is covered with thick felt. Sheep's wool beaten and compressed until it is 2 to 2.5 centimeters thick. That is about 1 inch. The result is a structure assembled in 2 to 4 hours by 2 to 3 people and disassembled and packed onto 2 horses in the same time. Modern sources confirm this timing. Traditional Mongolian yurt assembly takes 2 to 4 hours with a small team. No specialized tools required. The circular shape is the strongest structure against wind. No corners for wind to catch. Pressure distributes evenly around the entire structure. The dome maximizes interior space. A gers 4.5 meters in diameter comfortably houses a family of 4 plus belongings. The central smoke hole allows fire inside. On the Mongolian steppe, winter cold kills in hours without heat. Here is what makes the design brilliant. The entire structure is held by tension and compression. No nails, no permanent joints. Every piece is replaceable in the field. Broken lattice pole? Cut a new one from local wood. Damaged felt? Patch it with wool from your sheep. The system is completely decentralized. It depends on no factories or specialized tools. The Mongols use felt for one reason. It is the best insulation available for its weight. Felt is made by beating raw wool while wet. The fibers lock together into a dense mat. The result traps air between fibers, creating excellent insulation. Wool insulation provides roughly R3.9 per inch of thickness, comparable to modern fiberglass at R3.5 per inch. But felt is completely natural, repairable, and requires no manufacturing infrastructure. Mongols layer their garn doors. 1 layer of felt in summer, 2 or 3 layers in winter. The same structure adapts to different seasons. And felt is windproof. On the open steppe, wind chill is what kills. Felt stops the wind completely. We know Mongol garments worked because the Mongol Empire conquered a quarter of Earth's landmass. Their armies moved faster than any force in history, and they did it living in portable shelters. Marco Polo described Mongol gers in detail. He noted that wealthy Mongols had gers so large they required 22 oxen to transport. The design is still used today. In Mongolia, over 30% of the population still lives in traditional gers. The design has not changed in 800 years because it does not need to. A well-maintained Mongol gers lasted 20 to 30 years. Felt needs replacing every 5 to 10 years, but wooden frames last decades. Families pass frames down through generations. Today, glamping resorts worldwide use gers designs. They call them yurts, but it is the exact same structure Mongols used 800 years ago. Why? Because the design is perfect, stable, spacious, comfortable, adaptable. The Mongols figured out the optimal portable structure. We are still using it. Section 5. The Black Tent. Now we move to the Arabian Desert. 100 AD. You are a Bedouin trader traveling between Damascus and Mecca. Daytime temperature reaches 49 degrees Celsius. That is 120 degrees Fahrenheit. At night, it drops to 4 degrees Celsius. No shade, no water, no trees, just sand and rock for hundreds of kilometers. You need shelter that creates shade without trapping heat, that survives sandstorms with winds over 80 kilometers per hour, that packs onto camels, and it must last decades because materials are expensive and rare in the desert. What do you build? The Bedouins built what Arabs call Bayt al-Shah, the house of hair, a rectangular tent, low profile, typically 5 to 6 meters long and 3 to 4 meters wide. The fabric is black, made entirely from goat hair. The structure is simple. Wooden poles hold up a flat or slightly angled roof. Walls are often left open or have panels that raise or lower. This tent is not temporary. Bedouin families lived in the same tent for 20 to 30 years. Let me explain why this design is absolute genius. Because at first it seems wrong. Black fabric in the desert. That absorbs heat. It should make the tent hotter. Wrong. The black goat hair absorbs heat on the outside. This causes air inside the tent to heat up and rise. As hot air rises and escapes through open sides and gaps in the weave, it creates a constant updraft. Cool air is pulled in from ground level. The tent becomes a natural air conditioning system. This is called the stack effect. Modern architects study this principle. The Bedouins engineered it without understanding the physics. They just knew it worked. Research confirms this. Studies at Wadi Rum in Jordan show that inside a Bedouin tent on a 49-degree day, temperature is 8 to 10 degrees cooler than outside. That is the difference between dangerous heat and survivable conditions. The low profile means the tent presents minimal surface to wind. Sandstorms blow over it without catching. Open walls allow airflow. In extreme heat, Bedouins lift all wall panels. The roof provides shade while air flows freely underneath. Why goat hair instead of wool? Because goat hair has unique properties. When dry, fibers are loose and open. Air flows through. This creates ventilation. When wet, fibers swell and tighten. The weave closes. The tent becomes waterproof. In the desert, rain is rare. But when it comes, it is a sudden downpour. The goat hair tent automatically adjusts. Goat hair is incredibly durable. It does not rot. It does not attract insects. It can last 20 to 30 years with proper care. The weave is intentionally loose. You can see through it when held to light. This loose weave is deliberate. It allows the stack effect to work. We know Bedouin black tents worked because Bedouin culture survived in the harshest desert on earth for over 3,000 years. T.E. Lawrence of Arabia, lived with Bedouins during World War I. He noted that inside a Bedouin tent on a 46-degree day, temperature was 15 to 20 degrees cooler. Western explorers in the 19th and 20th centuries all commented on Bedouin tent effectiveness. Many adopted them for desert expeditions because they worked better than European canvas. Bedouin tents are still used today across the Middle East. A Bedouin black tent lasted 20 to 30 years, with maintenance. Fabric needs occasional patching, but does not need full replacement. Compared to modern tents marketed as four-season, they last 2 to 5 years before UV destroys fabric and coating. The Bedouins built tents that outlasted a generation. We build tents that barely outlast a warranty. Today, architects study Bedouin tents when designing buildings for hot climates. Passive cooling principles apply to modern construction. The Qatar Faculty of Islamic Studies uses Bedouin tent-inspired design. A double-layered facade creates airflow and cooling using the same stack effect. The Bedouins solved desert cooling 3,000 years ago. We are just now rediscovering their techniques. Section 6. The European Knights. Finally, we return to medieval Europe. 1346 AD. The Siege of Calais. You are an English knight under King Edward III. The siege will last 11 months. You are not moving. You are establishing a command post. But here is the problem nobody talks about. Medieval sieges killed more soldiers through disease than combat. Damp conditions bred illness. Poor ventilation spread sickness. Commanders who could not keep their troops healthy lost wars. You need shelter that is not just comfortable. You need a structure that keeps men alive through months of rain, cold, and cramped conditions. You need mobile architecture, the pavilion. European knights built pavilions. These were not simple tents. These were engineered structures that solved problems modern emergency shelters still struggle with. The design was circular, square, or octagonal. Smallest pavilions were 3 meters square. Largest reached 9 meters across. The structure had vertical walls, full standing height of 2 to 3 meters, not sloped like Viking tents, not low like Bedouin tents. A separate roof peaked in the center, supported by poles creating an internal frame. Walls and roof were separate pieces. This is the key engineering insight that makes pavilions genius. Why this design is genius? The separated wall and roof system solved 3 critical problems simultaneously. First, ventilation. The gap between wall top and roof bottom creates continuous airflow. Hot, stale air rises and escapes at the peak. Fresh air enters at the gap. This passive ventilation prevented the disease that killed more medieval soldiers than swords. Modern emergency shelter designers use this exact principle. The Red Cross pavilion-style shelters use separated walls and roofs for the same reason. The medievals figured it out 700 years earlier. Second, modularity. Because walls and roof are separate, damaged sections can be replaced individually. A torn wall panel does not require replacing the entire structure. This is the same principle modern military uses for field hospitals. The wall sections could also be rearranged. Need a larger space for a war council? Connect 2 pavilions. Need individual sleeping quarters? Subdivide with interior panels. This modular flexibility made pavilions adaptable to any tactical situation. Third, structural engineering. The circular and octagonal shapes distribute wind load evenly, just like the Mongol, but the separated roof adds something else. The roof can flex independently of the walls. In high winds, the roof moves slightly while walls stay anchored. This prevents the catastrophic failure that destroys rigid structures. The fabric was linen, lighter than wool, stronger fiber per fiber, could be dyed vibrant colors. But linen absorbs water. It has no natural waterproofing like wool. Medieval craftsmen solved this with a formula still used today. 2 parts melted beeswax, 1 part boiled linseed oil, 1 part turpentine. They painted this mixture onto linen, then heated it with a hot iron or sunlight. Heat melts wax into fibers. The result was linen that shed water for 5 to 10 years. Modern canvas waterproofing uses nearly identical chemistry. But here is the genius part. The wax treatment also made linen fire-resistant. In an era of siege warfare with flaming arrows, a fire-resistant command tent was not luxury. It was survival. The most famous example is the Field of Cloth of Gold. In 1520, King Henry VIII met King Francis I near Calais. Both kings brought entire courts, thousands of people, a city of pavilions. Historians named the event after the tents because they were covered in gold thread. But the engineering underneath those decorations kept thousands of people alive and healthy for weeks. Chronicles from the 100 Years' War describe commanders living in pavilions for months during sieges. The siege of Orleans lasted 7 months. French commanders used the same pavilions the entire time. Tournament records show knights bringing their pavilions to events year after year. These tents were investments that lasted a lifetime. A well-maintained pavilion lasted 15 to 25 years. Linen needed re-waterproofing every 5 to 10 years. Wooden poles needed oiling annually. Ropes needed replacement as they wore. But the structure itself was generational. Wealthy families treated pavilions like furniture. They maintained them, repaired them, passed them down. Today, event companies rent pavilion-style tents for weddings and festivals. The design is identical to medieval pavilions. Circular or square, vertical walls, peaked roof, separated sections. Emergency response organizations use the same principles. Field hospitals, command centers, refugee shelters. The separated wall and roof design that medieval engineers perfected remains the gold standard. We did not improve on it. We just make it with different materials. Section 7. Why each choice was perfect. Now you have seen 4 shelters. Let me show you why each culture chose differently. The pattern of materials. Viking wadmal. Sheep everywhere in Scandinavia. Renewable every spring. Wool stays warm when wet. Critical for maritime survival. Mongol felt. Wool processed differently. Maximum insulation for minimum weight. A warrior cannot carry 20 kilograms of tent. Felt provides warmth at half the weight of woven wool. Bedouin goat hair. Goats thrive in deserts where sheep cannot survive. Goat hair breathes when dry, seals when wet. Perfect for a climate where heat is constant but rain is sudden. European linen, lighter than wool. Takes dye beautifully. Knights had wagons, so weight mattered less, status mattered more, and the waterproofing chemistry worked better on linen than wool. The pattern of shapes. Viking triangle. Maximum stability with minimum material. Sheds water automatically. Sets up in 15 minutes because raiders might need to leave in 16. Mongol circle. Strongest shape against wind. No corners to catch gusts. Dome maximizes interior volume. Central fire keeps everyone warm. Bedouin rectangle. Low profile for sandstorms. Flat roof for stack effect cooling. Open sides for airflow. Form follows the physics of heat. European vertical. Standing room for armor and meetings. Separated sections for ventilation and modularity. Shape that projects power while engineering health. No culture chose their design randomly, each optimized for their primary need. Vikings needed speed and maritime survival. Mongols needed mobility and extreme cold protection. Bedouins needed cooling and decade-long durability. Europeans needed health, modularity and months of occupation. Different tools for different jobs. That is the ancient lesson. Section 8. The clothes. Remember Marcus, the backpacker whose $400 tent failed in 3 months? After learning about these shelters, he made a different choice. He bought a canvas tent based on traditional principles. Heavier than synthetic. Cost $600. That was 4 years ago. Over 90 nights of use. Rain, snow, wind. It still does not leak. He has patched it twice. Oiled the poles once. His old synthetic tent cost $400 and lasted 3 months. That is $133 per month. His canvas tent cost $600 and has lasted 4 years. That is $12 per month. The traditional approach is actually cheaper. You just have to think long term. But this is not just about tents. The Vikings, Mongols, Bedouins, and European knights teach us something bigger. There is no universal solution. There are specialized solutions, and specialization beats generalization every single time. Modern consumer culture tries to sell you one product that does everything. One tent for all seasons. One tool for all jobs. Ancient cultures knew better. They built different tools for different jobs, and they built them to last. Stop buying one knife that tries to do everything. Buy a chef's knife for the kitchen and a pocket knife for the field. Stop buying one jacket that claims to work in all weather. Buy a rain shell for rain and insulation for cold. Stop looking for the perfect tent. Start asking, what is my primary need? Weekend car camping, where weight does not matter. Think like a European knight. Get a canvas pavilion. It will last 20 years. Backpacking, where every gram matters. Think like a Viking raider. Get a simple tarp, fast setup, lightweight, repairable. Desert camping. Think like a Bedouin. Get breathable fabric and understand shade. Winter camping on the plains. Think like a Mongol. Get insulation and wind protection. 4 cultures, 4 shelters, 4 perfect solutions. They did not have better technology. They had better thinking. And you can use that thinking today.